for being with us. Thanks for participating in the Roundtable United for Ukraine Cooperation Mechanisms of Local and Regional Authorities in Times of War. My name is Andrii Kulakova. I'm going to moderate today's Roundtable. And as a moderator, let me just repeat several technical rules. Could you please make sure that you have your name instead of just a number or a territorial community? Could you please make sure that you have your name and last name? Second thing, there was a request to those people who don't speak today, close your mics, otherwise we'll have cacophony of the sounds. Thanks a lot for mentioning your territorial communities and the towns. That's really very important because we want to make sure that the objective of today's round table is achieved. Local self-governments in Ukraine demonstrated huge responsibility when it comes to preserve the culture of democracy based on human rights, rule of law, given the Russian aggression in Ukraine that is ongoing. The communities happen to be at the front line when protecting people of the country, providing the services amid the extreme humanitarian crisis. Almost 5 million of Ukrainians are abroad. Almost 7 million were forced to become IDPs in Ukraine. The effects of the war and humanitarian crisis are everyday challenges that local authorities face, in particular when it comes to security and safety, food supply, accommodation, bomb shelters. Apart from that, they also maintain the feeling of unity and concerted efforts that are so important for us to withstand this dire situation. So the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe, jointly with the Association of Ukrainian Cities, and jointly with the German city of Zinkenfeld, organized this roundtable. Mayors of Ukrainian cities and mayors of European cities, as well as local authorities engaged in this roundtable, is aimed to discuss the challenges and through unity find responses to the challenges, especially given the platform Cities for Cities. And I'm sure that a roundtable will contribute to closer cooperation between these cities. The roundtable is organized by the Council of Europe project to strengthen local governments. The project is implemented in Ukraine as part of the action plan between the Council of Europe and Ukraine for the period of 2018-2022. The project is aimed at improving capacity of local authorities and national associations to resolve unprecedented humanitarian, social, economic and environmental challenges that we face as a result of the war, to restore democracy and resilience at the local level, and is also aimed at post-war recovery in Ukraine. Dear colleagues, I'm going to keep an eye on the time because we have many participants at this roundtable. We know that there will be questions, and the number of questions is hard to predict. So I would kindly request you to stick to the time frame, and I'm going to remind you about the time allocated for the comments and presentations. So we launched the roundtable. Let's move over to the opening remarks. And these are the people that have a clear vision as to what are the key priorities of today's discussion. Let me give the floor to Leendert Verbeek, President of the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe.
Thank you very much. Do you reach me?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Dear Minister, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to address you today on behalf of the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of our Council of Europe. We are glad to witness that the support and solidarity for Ukraine and Ukrainian people remain strong as we stand united. And we would like to congratulate Ukraine on having recently been granted the EU candidate status. The reconstruction platform announced during the recovery conference held in Lugano during the last 2 days is an example that the joint efforts to rebuild Ukrainian communities are already coming to the fore. Just a month ago, the Secretary General of the Congress, Andreas Kiefer, and myself paid a visit to your country, and it's nice to see many of you back on the screen. On that occasion, Mayor Klitschko and I signed a joint declaration of the Congress and the Association of Ukrainian Cities. In this declaration, we reaffirmed our commitment to ensure rapid and stable reconstruction of Ukrainian communities and the restoration of the full democratic functioning of local authorities in line with the principles of the European Charter of Local Self-Government. This roundtable builds on the resilience that characterizes you, Ukrainian authorities and leaders, and your engagement for democratic values. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is a violation of these values that are at the core of our democratic societies. An assault on freedom, sovereignty, and the rule of law. Since the 24th of February, Ukrainian local and regional elected representatives have been mobilized to protect their citizens and communities, standing united in fierce defense of democratic and European values. By remaining on the front line, protecting lives and rights of citizens, you, local and regional elected leaders, are a great source of inspiration for Europe and the world. We are impressed by your fortitude and determination. And I am convinced that the resistance that we admire today in Ukraine is grounded on the long-lasting work for embedding fundamental democratic values in local communities and empowering local authorities as fully fledged partners of a strong multi-level governance system. The rebuilding and preservation of democracy is a daily battle, and we are determined to provide continued support with all our capacities and means, today and in the time to come. This roundtable event is a great opportunity to discuss the challenges you face and to strengthen the cooperation between Ukrainian authorities and their ties with other European countries. We hope that the roundtable will give a momentum to further partnership building and an exchange of experiences and know-how. This is also an opportunity to promote one of our success stories, the Cities for Cities platform, that already counts 150 registered local authorities and is attracting increased international attention day by day. Bernd Verringer will speak later about this today. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude with a quote from Maria Pecinovich-Buric, Secretary General of the Council of Europe at the Lugano conference. Ukraine's recovery, in its fullest sense, requires good governance and European values to underpin it. Identifying new and improving the existing cooperation mechanisms between local and regional authorities from Ukraine and other European countries is key to enlarging the scope of solidarity. Solidarity with the Ukrainian municipalities in fostering good local and regional governance, upholding the democratic values as the necessary foundation for the post-war renewal. We shall act as one, united for and with Ukraine, in your cities, in your towns, and in your leadership positions, with your people and with democracy. And united we will prevail. I wish you all a fruitful meeting and discussion, and I thank you for your attention.
Дякую, пане Вербек. І якщо ви сказали, що вражені нашими стійкістю,
Thanks a lot, Mr. Verbeek. You said that you are impressed with our resilience and determination, and we are impressed with the commitment that you display and the assistance that we receive from municipalities of European cities. But there is always room for improvement, and that's why it's very important to listen to Kyrylo Tymoshenko, Deputy Head of the President's Office of Ukraine. Over to you. Thanks a lot. Dear colleagues, to start with, let me express my gratitude on behalf of the millions of Ukrainians that for 133 days defend their territories. Let me thank all of you for the support to local communities. Today's roundtable is held when Ukraine keeps developing partnership relations with our allies and partners to defend our independence, to protect integrity and independence, and restore destroyed cities. EU candidate status vests additional responsibility on us in terms of continuing reforms in various sectors of our life. Given the situation we are in, special importance is given to multi-layer governance, and local and regional authorities should have concerted actions and coordinate their efforts. That's really important to achieve our objective. That's to win the enemy and rebuild Ukraine. Since the beginning of the war, the central authorities, local governments are in ongoing dialogue to find solutions to everyday challenges and jointly plan the interventions to rebuild the country. Under the presidency of the President Zelensky and head of President's Office Andrii, we have regular meetings of the Congress of Local Authorities. That's the platform for the dialogue that we borrowed from the Council of Europe. Almost every day, regularly, I have the meetings with representatives of local authorities. All of this allows to make coordinated decisions that are so much needed by the country and people. We are able to hear each other. We are actively working with the Association of Ukrainian Cities to develop joint solutions. Most of the leaders of local authorities showed courage, patriotism, and determination in defending our country. From the very first days of the war, we coordinated our efforts to build fortifications, to evacuate civilians, to provide people with humanitarian assistance and all critically important services. We are jointly working to get ready for the heating season for new academic year in schools and to restore the destroyed infrastructure. Thanks to a great construction project and thanks to the military administrations, we developed the recovery plan of Ukraine, and one of the crucial elements is fast recovery. That means that we quickly rebuild critically important infrastructure that is so much needed today, so that people are back in their homes, so that people are able to get educational and healthcare services, administrative services. That's something that should be done immediately. That's what we talked about at the meeting in early June with Mr. Verbeek, who was visiting Kyiv, and with Mr. Kiefer, who was in Kyiv too. A lot of infrastructural objects have been destroyed in our country. Thousands of people were killed, millions were forced to leave their homes. And in the course of recent months, jointly with local and regional authorities, experts have been developing the plan of fast recovery. So we developed the online system that records all destructions. We calculated every meter of the destroyed infrastructure. As we speak, we need to urgently rebuild 40,000 objects of the destroyed infrastructure. That includes 400 schools, hospitals, water, gas, and heat supply systems. Other objects, that's housing. In parallel with that, we are working on long-term project of rebuilding and transforming Ukraine into modern, strong European country, comfortable to live in. National Recovery Council is made of representatives of central authorities, local governments, NGOs, Ukrainian and international experts. The tentative estimates when it comes to losses exceeds $700 million. Unfortunately, this number is increasing every day as war is ongoing. Rebuilding of this scale needs new standards of institutional guarantees of transparency. We are going to implement the best world experience in Ukraine, with the main principles being security, technological standards, green technologies, barrier-free society, and transparency. All of these, including new jobs, localization of international projects, is going to be crucial for rebuilding. We have just come back from Lugano conference where the government presented the post-war recovery plan. Heads of states participating in it denounced in decisive terms the invasion of Russian Federation in Ukraine that led to the destruction of infrastructure, schools, hospitals, cultural heritage, that forced people to leave their homes, that resulted in social and economic losses for the country, destabilized and put at threat food security. Thanks a lot. He clearly described the context we are working in, and he outlined the areas we need to focus our efforts on. So let me give the floor to Steen Nørlov, head of the Council of Europe office in Ukraine. You have 5 minutes, please. Thanks a lot. Good morning, dear participants of this roundtable. I am honored to represent Council of Europe office in Ukraine, and I'm happy to welcome you at this roundtable dedicated to the discussion of the mechanisms of effective cooperation of local and regional authorities in the time of war. Council of Europe Action Plan for Ukraine for 2018-2022 that was developed to support reforms to bring legislation and Ukrainian institutions in compliance with European standards on human rights, rule of law, and democracy was adapted to the requirements of the war time, given the current situation in Ukraine and the wishes of Ukrainian partners. Today, our major priorities in the work of the Council of Europe office in Ukraine are the support to be provided to the authorities in dealing with the effects of ongoing aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine in the following areas: human rights protection, including IDPs, especially given the wartime, transparent and accountable democratic governance, access to information, and independent broadcasting in Ukraine. In this extremely difficult times in Ukraine, we can identify success stories and two landmarking events that is the result of long-term and fruitful cooperation of the Council of Europe with Ukrainian partners. The first landmarking event is the following. On June 20, 2022, The President of Ukraine signed the executive order that was supported by most of the members of the Parliament of Ukraine to finally ratify Istanbul Convention of the Council of Europe. Ukraine, with the support of the Council of Europe, has seen a long path to see the ratification of the Istanbul Convention. That's a very important step for Ukraine that is a sign to European community of Ukraine's readiness to undertake long-term obligations in combating all forms of violence and protect human rights at the highest level, including rights of women. And second landmarking event was on June 23, 2022, when leaders of 27 EU member states at the summit in Brussels made a decision to grant EU candidate status to Ukraine. Ukraine is facing a long way of transformations in all sectors to adopt respective amendments in legislation to protect human rights, secure rule of law, and democratic development of society. However, the first significant step on the way of Ukraine's joining European community has been made. My congratulations to all of you. Given these successes, we have to remember that the war is raging in Ukraine. With the beginning of a large-scale invasion of Russian Federation into Ukraine, local self-governments happen to be in a very difficult situation. They are facing challenges and have huge responsibility for preserving culture, democracy in their communities. They happen to be at the front line, defending and protecting their citizens and providing basic services in extreme humanitarian and economic crisis. That's why these type of round tables are very important in the times of crisis, because the events like this are aimed at uniting the efforts and create the platform to exchange experience between Ukrainian communities and other municipalities of Europe. Dear participants, I do believe that Ukraine will prevail, and I know that Ukrainian communities are strong, united. Let me reassure all of you that Council of Europe office in Ukraine welcomes the efforts undertaken by Ukraine and will continue supporting Ukraine on its way of reforms to secure modern democratic society in Ukraine by providing consultative and expert support within the framework of the projects we are implementing in Ukraine. I wish all of you fruitful discussion today. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nørlov, and I thank all Council of Europe projects and staff. We know about your contribution and intentions and the value that your projects bring into Ukraine. And one of the ideas of today's roundtable is find new effective ways of cooperation. So these were opening remarks. You've heard what we are going to focus on today.
демократія воєнного часу, посилення багаторівневого врядування і партнерства між центральними та місцевими органами влади. У нас будуть говорити саме ті люди, які знаються на цій темі, бо доля вже судила.
Will be now listening from those who are very experienced in these matters, as they have been doing that since day one of the full-scale Russian invasion. We have an hour and 5 speakers. Therefore, I would kindly request all the speakers to keep their interventions to 9 minutes so that we can take questions after all. And the first to take the floor is Mr. Nehoda, First Deputy Minister. Thank you. Dear colleagues, dear participants of this roundtable, I will start by thanking the conveners of this event, the Congress and the Council of Europe's office, which has always been working very effectively in Ukraine, for the opportunity to take part in this event, an event which is important for us, Ukrainians, and for our cooperation with the Council of Europe in the future. Let me emphasize that the local governments in Ukraine have their history, and we understand that in its development as a democratic nation, Ukraine will always have to support effective local government and capable communities. Thanks to our cooperation and assistance of our international partners, Council of Europe in the first place, we in Ukraine have succeeded in making very important decisions to support the development of capable communities. Local development is very important, and as we have all been able to see in the past months, contributed importantly to our resistance, to our defense. Thanks to decentralization, Ukrainian communities gained powers and resources in order to make life of local residents as comfortable as it gets, and to provide them with the necessary services. Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe and other institutions of the Council of Europe have all mentioned that in the past, but I will once again emphasize this. Decentralization has been one of the most successful reforms carried out in Ukraine that became an important element of its social and economic development. And by the way, the European Commission reviewing Ukrainian application for the membership in the European Union mentioned that as well. Ukrainians take pride in their achievements, and for them it is an additional motivation to carry on the reforms. The Parliament are interested in implementing the final stage of the reform. However, the Russian invasion changed our plans a bit. The local government, as well as the entire nation, woke up in the new reality that requires very particular decisions. We are now in the state of martial law, and this means that certain government authorities, military commanders, and local governments have to carry out special duties. In spite of the martial law, the local governments continue their work, in particular related to handling the issues arising from the inflow of IDPs. Local governments work with civilian authorities and military authorities in order to implement certain tasks. Does centralization have any effect on the defense capacity of Ukrainians? Yes, it does. Local leaders from the very beginning of the Russian invasion stood up to defend their communities and the entire country and continue offering resistance to the occupying state. Some of them have to work amongst hostilities or even in the temporarily occupied territories, but all of them work very hard to provide humanitarian aid, to make life of IDPs as comfortable as they could. Local government in wartime has shown its effectiveness and efficiency. Dear colleagues, in wartime, both the government and the parliament, well, all of us, we had to introduce urgent changes to the laws and of Ukraine and regulations. I will point to select examples. The budget code of Ukraine had to be changed, and it was to take account of the special features of martial law, the food security. One important law that was amended makes it possible for local governments, local government officials to take personal decisions on urgent matters. I will not now list multiple decisions taken by the government, and we will be discussing many similar urgent matters that we are now facing. If I were to make some conclusion, I would say that the decisions taken were well balanced, and none of them encroached on the powers of local government. Now, with regard to the communication and needs of the local communities. In wartime, the central authorities still support the democratic institutions and local government. Relevant decisions are in particular reviewed at different levels. As far as our ministry is concerned, we are in touch with local governments and their associations. Today, with the Association of Ukrainian Cities, are in direct communication, and the ministry has an advisory group working under its aegis and provides advice to local governments in respect of local budgets. And we once again appreciate the assistance of the Council of Europe in this respect. We are planning to expand the platform by for instance, providing access to 210 different explanatory memoranda that might be helpful for local authorities and IDPs. We are trying to monitor the situation in local communities to understand which matters stand out as the most urgent, and try to share our experience, professional experience, very relevant for our current circumstances of war and martial law. I also think that it is important to mention Mr. Kulikov was part of it. We have done a series of international marathons in order to convey the truthful situation to the rest of the world. Over 1,000 municipalities from 35 nations joined this effort, and let me thank you to Council of Europe's project, the centralization of administration in Ukraine, because as they are partners, they have stood by us and helped us a lot. Currently, we are working on implementation of important tasks related to the candidate status we recently were granted by the European Union. In conclusion, no doubt that our key task today is the occupation and restoration of territorial integrity of Ukraine, and we do hope that our partners will stand by us, as we understand that the dangers we are facing are a threat to Europe and the rest of the world. Therefore, our victory, Ukraine's victory in this patriotic war, genuinely patriotic war, is going to be our common victory, a victory in which Ukrainians will share with nationals of other countries that are helping us currently. Without this help, well, I can't even imagine what it would look like. With regard to local government, within the framework of the National Council for Recovery of Ukraine, we have drafted a roadmap, and I think that we will discuss it at length at other events. And I think that this reform will have to be brought to completion, to successful completion, and our current experience is a test to local government, to local leaders, and I do hope that this test will make local democracy in Ukraine to such a degree that it will be a good example for the rest of Europe. Thank you, Mr. Nehoda. No pauses and very insightful. I didn't have time even to interfere and warn you that your time was running up any. The time is important because it brings us closer to our victory. And by the way, I liked what Mr. Nehoda mentioned in respect of local elections. So we will win and we will successfully carry out the local elections. With this, let me invite Mr. Bezhin. Mr. Bezhin is a member of the Ukrainian parliament, and we all recognize how important interaction with the parliament is. He is a member of the parliamentary Committee on Regional Development, Local Government, Urban Planning. Mr. Bezhin, the floor is yours. Good morning. I am on the road and therefore can only talk to you in this recording environment. What can I say from key things? Inter alia at Luhan's conference, the successes of Ukrainian decentralization reform was mentioned on numerous occasions, and I would once again like to recognize the contribution of local governments to our common defense. Local communities are now being measured and as far as their capacity to resist the enemy is concerned. The decentralization was mentioned at Luhana, and Mrs. von der Leyen mentioned decentralization alongside IT reform as the two most successful efforts taken by Ukraine. The government and the parliament and the presidential office should rely on that. I am convinced that any corrections to be taken in 22 and 23 will certainly take into account the changes. You know that local government is within the remit of my committee, the committee I'm responsible for, and the draft law in question will be introduced to the parliament this week. We are going to eliminate some of the shortcomings that the previous decisions had. And I think that practical implementation is high on our agenda. That is very important that the government has a strategy, has a vision for recovery, and it's good that we have been able to coordinate this vision with international partners, but we should all understand that without city for city or direct involvement of our international partners, this vision would be more difficult to implement. But local leaders know what should be recovered in their communities. Therefore, grassroots support should be in the basis of the recovery of Ukraine, and will certainly be working with the Association of Ukrainian Cities and other international partners. In conclusion, I think that we will stick to our promises, and our international partners will see that local communities keep playing an important role in the recovery of Ukraine. Thank you.
Відповідного комітету Віталію Безгіну, зверніть увагу на те, що він сказав Луганська конференція, маючи на увазі конференцію в Лугано. І для нас це насправді символічно, бо будуть ще й Луганські конференції.
Well, thanks a lot to the member of the parliament. Well, he mentioned Lugano conference, and that echoes with the name of Ukrainian city, that's Lugansk city. And well, no matter whether this territory is occupied or not, the people are Ukrainian people, and we have to support all of them. Let me give the floor to Viacheslav Chaus, the head of Chernihiv Regional State Administration. Thank you, Andrii. Dear members of the Congress, dear participants of this roundtable, I'm really happy to participate in this discussion. And let me welcome you from Chernihiv Oblast. As a result of treacherous invasion of Russian Federation, Chernihiv Oblast was one of the first oblasts that was exposed to the lethal objects of Russian Federation. It was severely damaged as a result of invasion. Dozens of cities and towns were subjected to shelling, bombing with air bombs and missiles. 2/3 of the oblast were either exposed to shelling or temporarily occupied by Russian enemy. The enemy killed around 500 civilians in our oblast. 1,000 civilians were injured. Unfortunately, 22 children died. Torture, ill treatment, killing, destruction of infrastructure. That's what the enemy brought into Ukrainian soil. The occupiers destroyed or damaged 5,000 buildings in Chernihiv Oblast. Housing was damaged seriously. 90% of destructions are houses. Thousands of people lost their homes and apartments. As a result of intense hostilities, nevertheless, we saw really constructive cooperation and interaction with the President's office, with the government, with the members of the parliament, with some ministries. Thanks to quick responses, emergency responses of the government, sometimes it took us just several minutes to find the solutions and decisions to assist armed forces of Ukraine to defend the country and support the civilians. That includes supplying fuel, medicines, food supply. We organized several evacuations, and it was under shelling. It was evacuation from Chernihiv as well. Communities were searching and found the ways how to support people. People shared everything they had to make sure that everybody is provided with food, medicine, and livelihoods. Several months before the war, we created and successfully established the Community Council in Chernihiv Oblast. That was the platform for all leaders of 57 communities to establish effective communication. And this tool was especially handy during the war because the relocation of the enemy, coordination of humanitarian assistance, all that was done thanks to direct exchange of information between mayors and military administration. And that was done on the platform that we established. And that was also an effective tool to provide assistance, to coordinate humanitarian assistance, to coordinate the relocation of people from the intense shelling, to provide support to the territorial defense units. Some communities were inaccessible due to the attack of the enemy, and we even managed to supply cash there because non-cash transactions were not possible then. So we managed to transfer cash there so that people could withdraw money from ATMs there and buy some food. And we even paid pensions to the people on the temporarily occupied territories in our oblast. Now, when Chernihiv Oblast is liberated, since early April, we have been working on rebuilding our infrastructure. Thanks to the position of the President's office and executive authorities, thanks to their support, the government makes clear decisions to allocate money to rebuild schools, hospitals, critical infrastructure, utility companies' housing, and numerous houses and apartments that were destroyed. In several weeks, we are starting renovating apartment blocks in Chernihiv Oblast. 19 out of 25 bridges and crossings have already been reconstructed and rebuilt. That's an ongoing work. We are learning our lessons. We are in ongoing dialogue with the communities. We are trying to make sure that we have proper bomb shelters as well as storages. That's very important for us. We are improving the channels of warning the civilians about the risks and threats. Unfortunately, I cannot say that all community leaders were really dedicated during the occupation. As military administration, sometimes we had to interfere to make sure that humanitarian assistance is properly allocated and right decisions are made. Several months have passed since the territory was liberated, but Chernihiv is just considering what money should be allocated for more bomb shelter. In Novokarylovka, Novosilovka, they are making quick decisions and avoid red tape because that's critically important. The same goes for repairing the housing. Some leaders of the communities wait for the others to make decisions for them and act for them. The government and the state is amid the war, and the main task is to support the armed forces and defend the country. And even given this dire situation, the money is allocated from the budget to renovate the damaged houses to make sure that everything is fixed before winter comes. Let me just say that the success is going to be secured only when everybody does what he's supposed to do in his position, rather than looking for excuses and reasons to explain why he or she cannot do that. Leaders shouldn't play politics, but make vital decisions. Thank you. Glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes. Special thanks to you for revealing the challenges and problems that you are facing, because if you identify the problem that well, if not a problem, so negative experience is no less important than positive experience to be able to deal with it and find solutions. What Viacheslav was telling us was, the following, that scenes that we are doing in peaceful times come really handy at the time of war. And what we are doing now is going to be handy after we prevail, when victory is secured. Let me give the floor now to the person who knows what is happening in every town and city of Ukraine. That's Oleksandr Slobozhan. Everybody knows him. Oleksandr is an executive director of the Association of Ukrainian Cities. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We have a really very important round table today, and our first session is dedicated to critical issues. And I think that the messages in introductory and opening remarks were really clear and right. Synergy of central authorities and municipalities is at the core of rebuilding Ukraine. We need to secure high quality recovery and reconstruction of Ukraine. Another important thing is that at the time when we have martial law, we saw that it was not only problems that have been revealed, but some specificities of local self-governance were identified too. And that means that decentralization reform, apart from all the things that we know about it, well, that's one of the most successful reforms, because decentralized country and ability and capacity of municipalities to make decisions quickly and effectively, financial resources available to them, proper mechanisms of governance, all that made it possible that we are successful in repelling the enemy. We are providing basic services. The main task of local authorities with the beginning of the war was to provide people with livelihood. I've been to Bucha and I know how local authorities acted there. And I can tell you for sure that without decentralization reform, without the reform that included budget and services provision, without that elements that we have done, it would be difficult for the authorities to act properly during the war. Another important thing about the reform is the level of trust between the government and local authorities. And without this multi-level coordination and harmony, it would be difficult to act. Jointly with the President's office, we developed the guidance on evacuation of staff of municipalities, mayors, leaders of the communities, and this allowed to save many lives and provide for the livelihood of the communities. We didn't see instances of collaboration. Communities stayed united. Starting February 24, as an association, we have a sad register of abducted officials of local authorities. The only reason they were abducted is their positions, is the fact that they are elected officials, local officials. The only thing they did is just they were providing services, basic services to people. They were engaged in evacuation of people. Can you hear me? Now, we still have 8 mayors of villages and towns being in captivity. And I'm grateful to the Congress and other international organizations for support. We have a lot of international partners that help us in this regard. We have this register to document these instances. Visibility of these crimes saves lives of people. Another challenge that we faced these days, and thanks to the cooperation with the Ministry of Finance and Ukrainian Treasury and well, we saw that in Chernihiv, we saw that in Kherson, Mykolaiv, Kharkiv, Sumy oblast. As I said, association jointly with the Ministry of Finance provided for funding, not only for the work of municipalities, but for the work of public utility companies, to provide for livelihood of people and to secure evacuation of people. The mechanisms that we established before the war allowed for quick exchange of information, and that included not only the movement of enemy and attacks, but it also included the assistance that we provided. I'm not going to give the name of the community because that's the community on the territory of Donetsk Oblast, and the situation there is very difficult. We do believe that shortly they will be liberated and they will become under government controlled. But when the bombing and shelling started, we procured water and food supply to people. We supplied fuel to the community, and that minimized losses among civilians.
And in conclusion, let me say that currently the National Recovery Plan is in the process of development. It was already represented in Luhano. It should embrace the achievements of local communities. Mr. Bezhin, Mr. Nehoda mentioned that the work group which is contributing to the amendments to the system of local government will be important to support the new quality of public governance. We'll probably have to switch to Nordic models of horizontal/vertical links. We have identified 4 types of territories. It's almost in the law, so to speak, where public authority will have its special features. For instance, even if we talk about the heating season, a lot has been said so far about supporting Ukrainian municipalities, not only by the central authorities and various international organizations and structures, but city for city. Let me mention it once again. The platform initiated by the Congress currently, there's 180 applications been filed. Ukrainian municipalities using this platform will be getting not just material support, as it were, but what is even more important, the guidance, methodological advice. We see that many communities, not only those that were in the area of hostilities, understood that it is important to review their administrative platforms. So sharing experience in administration is now seen as very important, improving relations to the regional authorities, not only representative bodies, but the regional departments of the government. So all this will require that law be changed based on the experience gained. And I hope that amendments will soon be ready, and they will certainly be based on their experience of local government. As a result, we may all expect to have even a better system of local government. well, knowing you and others in local government, I know that when you say you hope, you don't just hope, you contribute, and we will certainly build a system like that, not just gain it, and both bottom-up and top-down avenues will have to be explored. Before I yield to our next very important speaker, let me mention that the chat has a great number of questions from you, and I don't think that we will have time to respond to all of them. Therefore, I think we will announce, so to speak, some of them, but later on, all of them will be published and be dealt with appropriately. For instance, there's a question like that. It seems that I am the only person representing civil society institutions during this event. So, as such, I will encourage you to mention the role of civil society in making the operation of different authorities transparent. So you may want to ponder this question as your answer as you take the floor. But so please, and if you didn't do that during registration, please post your emails. And another housekeeping announcement: once you raised your virtual hand, keep it raised because it is impossible to remember everyone who raised it. With this, let me introduce someone whose local government knows very well, Andreas Kiefer, Secretary General of the Congress. Andreas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and a very good afternoon from Strasbourg, dear Deputy Minister Nehoda, dear mayors, members of the Congress delegation, colleagues, friends. It's really good to be together with you, and I'm very happy also to have our partners from the European Associations of Local and Regional Authorities with us, who from the very beginning responded very positively to a call of the Congress how to join forces in supporting Ukraine morally, politically, with humanitarian aid, coordinating that via the specialist institutions, and to support also the dissemination of the platform Cities for Cities. So I'm happy that we're a bigger family than just the Council of Europe family today. We are discussing urgent questions, and we are discussing how to prepare for the future. And this partnership building, multi-level governance, and the dialogue between local and central authorities for rebuilding Ukraine is crucial. And several participants, the Congress President, Mr. Tymoshenko, and others have referred to that this success story during the wartime should be continued on a new constitutional, possibly legal basis, and definitely in practice after the end of the war. I would like to appreciate the role that the national associations of local and regional authorities play. The Association of Ukrainian Cities has received the Benjamin Barber Global Cities Award 2022. Congratulations. The Congress has proposed the association for the North-South Prize of the Council of Europe. A decision will be taken later on. So this is to show that coordination is absolutely necessary, both within the country with the different levels, but also among the different types of local and regional authorities, the cities, the amalgamated municipalities, the oblast councils, and so on. So talking to each other, learning from each other, and defining joint action is really crucial. Let me refer to the very sad topic of abducted mayors. You may have seen that the Congress President, Mr. Verbeek, has issued a statement again last Thursday and recalled exactly what was said today, that these mayors are being attacked and threatened because they are representatives of the democratic system, which the aggressor does not like. I'm also very happy that the members of the Ukrainian delegation in the Congress participate actively in the committee meetings. We know very well that they have a lot to do in organizing humanitarian aid, in organizing everyday life, finding solutions, cooperating with the military administration. But it is also important that they come to Strasbourg for our committee meetings, that they talk to the mayors and councillors from other member states to maintain the interest, to maintain the attention, and to provide concrete information about what kind of help is needed. So this is an important forum also to work abroad with the European friends in cities, municipalities, and regions, in addition to the responsibilities that the members, mayors and councillors have in their home. Besides the urgent need for help, we need to look into the future. And the reason why the president and I went to Ukraine 4 weeks ago was the organization of the conference on reviving communities, reviving Ukraine. Ukraine can only be built from the bottom up, taking on board the citizens, taking on board the needs and experiences of local councillors and mayors. And this new post-war Ukraine is a long-term project. It is not just the visible infrastructures of roads and railways, hospitals, schools, housing, and so on. We also have to establish, and before we start to establish the technical infrastructure, the infrastructure that is not so much seen. It's the democratic institutions, the checks and balances, the respect of democratic elected representatives. So this is the basis on which the rebuilding of Ukraine can take place, and this is an urgent topic. We have to be marathon people there, but now I think we have to do a sprint as well to establish the structures, to build on the good experiences. And we have heard from Mr. Tymoshenko. We have heard also from others, also during our stay in Kiev, that the national government, the national parliament appreciates the capable local and regional politicians having taken responsibility, and the staff under their authority as well. We were impressed when we heard in Fastiv, in Zhytomyr, the staff telling us about, well, the mayor on the 25th of February told us next Monday, you will be back in the office. We have to keep the country running. And they did. And this is why Ukraine is really a remarkably well-functioning country based on functioning local administrative structures. And that is something that we also try to communicate to the others. Of course, a large part of the country is suffering from the war, and the population is really in a terrible situation. But outside the war zones, we have seen a really functioning administrative infrastructure run under the authorities of the mayors. And this is a story that we are telling, that it is worthwhile in investing emotions, time, and money in the rebuilding of Ukraine. Of course, war times are not comparable to other crises, but in this time especially, this crisis has shown that local and regional authorities are the most efficient actors to give response to a crisis in full respect for democracy, rule of law, and human rights. We heard, and President Verbeek likes also to cite this comment that we have heard, that Ukraine has a second army, an army of civilians, the elected mayors and councillors, the administrations, who have kept their hands on what they like, what is important for them, and that they are ready to defend. We have heard today also, and we will remind our Ukrainian friends also when it becomes more and more normal again, that this culture of dialogue, this culture of trust, of mutual information is maintained, that multi-level governance is not only stated in speeches and declarations, but that it is being lived and filled with life. This coordination with respecting the different responsibilities is very good for the quality of the decisions and the solutions, and multi-level governance allows greater flexibility in coping with the emergencies, as mayors and councillors are better suited to provide solutions tailored to specific needs. For this, of course, they need the necessary competences, responsibilities, resources, and weaving a fabric of cooperation and contributing to develop this climate of mutual trust further to better and jointly respond to the emergency situations. This is an ambition for the future, but it should start now to continue the very successful decentralization processes. And I would like to add, it is not just decentralization, it's strengthening of democratic local self-government. And there is this democratic element of local self-government which we must fully return to, and Ukraine should comply with the respective provisions of the European Charter of Local Self-Government. Yes, there is a possibility for exceptional measures to temporarily have centralized approaches, but they should be reduced and limited to the time needed. They should be proportional, and they should be under democratic control. I would like to really stress that the consultations with the local authorities via their national associations is not only a legal requirement that should be respected, but it's also very practical, and it improves the quality of the solutions and creates ownership, as we can see in the situation now that local authorities and the elected representatives really take ownership. And this constructive dialogue that is taking place between the national government, the national parliament, and the different associations of local and regional authorities is one of the big achievements, and should be kept also for the future. I think this is what we are here today. We have heard that. We will remind all our partners of these commitments that we have heard today, which have contributed to a really remarkable situation, energy, and courage. And it will be the basis, if it is preserved and nurtured for the future, for a very successful rebuilding of a new, stronger, more resilient and democratic European Ukraine.
Дуже дякую, пане Кіфер, зокрема за те, що ви підкреслили, що надзвичайні обставини не знімають відповідальності за дотримання і демократичних процедур, і демократичних накреслень. Ми це усвідомлюємо. Звичайно, за таких обставин іноді нам це не повністю вдається, але саме закладається потенціал на те, щоб успішніше навіть впоруватися із цим завданням. з узгодженням у майбутнього наших процедур із європейськими, і гнучкість і опірність тут ідуть насправді рука в руку. Колеги, ми успішно і майже вчасно закінчили нашу другу сесію. Нагадаю, що ми вже пообіцяли і обов'язково дотримаємось того, що на ваші відповіді переважно будуть дані відповіді на ваші запитання у наших публікаціях після закінчення сьогоднішнього круглого столу. Просто
Перекладач канал.
Ще одне запитання зачитаю. Сергій Яригін пише.
Сергій Яригін, here is writing, our organization is join cities for cities at the level of various communities. And Mr. Yarigin, could you please indicate the organization you were referring to? And with this, we will go to our next discussion, next part of our discussion of today. The topic is as important, European partnerships, solidarity in wartime, the role and cooperation of Ukrainian local governments. We will be hearing from mayors of our cities, and the first to take the floor is Mr. Volodymyr Moskalenko from Korosten, Zhytomyr oblast. Up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, dear participants of the round table. Thanks a lot to the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities and Council of Europe office in Ukraine, in Kyiv, for the invitation and the possibility to participate in this round table. On February 24, we were shelled. They targeted the civilians. There were no militaries. People died. 3 persons were killed and a child was wounded. And the war made us focus on the defense of our community. Second scene, that's evacuation of civilians and assistance, material, financial, humanitarian assistance to people to make sure that people are provided with food and live in more or less comfortable environment. Regarding defense, we've been cooperating with the armed forces of Ukraine with territorial defense. And whether that's funding, whether it's food supply, whether that's weapons supply, whether that's fortification construction, all this was done jointly with military administration, armed forces. We worked 24/7, and we had full understanding, support, and coordination with them. Regarding evacuation, that's a really crucial element because 50% of people in our community, that's 40,000 people, were evacuated to the west of Ukraine and abroad, Poland, for instance. We have been closely cooperating with the railway, and every day we organized evacuation to make sure that people feel safe. I was really impressed with the entrepreneurs, with businessmen, people in the community. We involved every transportation we had, buses, minibuses, cars to evacuate people. And whether that was fuel or vehicles, businesses that we have in our communities were responding immediately by providing vehicles, fuel, anything that was needed. We had twin cities in Russia and Belarus before, but on the very first week of the war, we had a session and broke any ties and contacts with them. But during the time of the war, we established contacts with Bourges, France, and Lithuanian town Butmerge. We signed a memorandum on cooperation with them online, and this cooperation with them is really effective. Bourges hosted women with children in their community and supplied them with everything they needed, whether that was housing, medicine, or food. At the same time, they have been providing humanitarian assistance to others who stayed here. The same with Udmurga. They are so helpful. And today is the day of statehood in Lithuania, and I actually congratulated them on their holiday. They have been providing humanitarian assistance. We had never-ending convoys with all the necessities we needed coming from them. Poland was so helpful during this month. Krasny is our partner town who provided constant humanitarian assistance. Other twin or partner cities in Ukraine, Volodymyr Volynski, for instance. The town is located on the border with Poland, so humanitarian convoys went through them. They have set up the hub that allocated humanitarian assistance. It was so helpful. Slovyansk town, we know what is happening to Slovyansk at this moment, but we are in constant touch with the mayor there. We are supporting people. We are hosting people from their community in here. The first IDPs that we had were people from Bucha, Hostomel, Borodyanka, the towns near Kiev. We provided people with housing, with hot meals. People came from absolutely destroyed places, so people needed to feel care. They needed empathy and support. So that's an ongoing process. We have more than 2,000 IDPs in our community, and we are trying to provide them with all the needs that they might have. At some point, we were requested to provide 3,000 places for IDPs from Lugansk oblast, in particular kids. We are ready to welcome them here. We are ready to host war-affected people here in our community. People in our community are full of sympathy, empathy, ready to help, ready to share everything they have. That's a trademark of our community. We stand united, and our task is the only task we all have now, is victory. Well, 5 minutes is not enough to tell you everything we are doing. There was actually a question about the civil society. What I can say is that we work hand in hand with them. We exchange information with civil society about IDPs, about humanitarian assistance. NGOs from France, Poland, Spain, Germany help us a lot with humanitarian assistance. They're just fantastic. And people know who is helping them. We try to make sure that visibility is there. We are all working for the common cause, for the victory. Thank you, Volodymyr. Very convincing, very detailed. And my only advice to you, you forget about radio. Well, we have a radio FM and it's there. but you didn't mention it. You said that you're disseminating information by internet. No, everybody's listening to the radio, especially when driving. We have local radio as well. Thank you, Volodymyr. In this session, we have 5 minutes for presentations. Well, organizers are saying 6 minutes. Okay, but 6, that's your maximum time. Try to stay focused on the core scenes. Yurii Fomichev, Mayor of Slavutych, over to you. Thanks, Andrii. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really pleased and honored to see my colleagues, at least in online format. The subject matter in this session is about solidarity, and that's the thing that everybody needs. Every community, every person needs solidarity, whether that's the words of support or the latter that the community receives, humanitarian assistance, shelters for people, technical assistance, military assistance. That's all about solidarity. War is the test of solidarity, and municipalities, Ukrainian, European, other municipalities, we all passed this test because the assistance that we've been receiving from the very first day of the war, starting February 24, and we happen to be encircled. We were in isolation, and municipalities passed this test of solidarity with excellent marks. Well, you cannot always say the same about European politicians, all of them, but we have been granted the EU candidate status. So let's say that European leaders passed the solidarity test too. But we have another major test to face. That's to prevail, to secure victory. We keep using the word crisis, but crisis can be caused by a disaster, pandemic. We had disaster after nuclear plant accident. Today we have another crisis caused by the war, and this crisis can be eliminated by our victory. And that's the major test that we are still going to take. Getting back to solidarity with our Ukrainian cities and European partners, we felt this solidarity every minute. I'm not going to list the names of the towns because there were so many of them. Slavutych was encircled. We were cut off from logistic channels. Neither fuel, food, or anything could be supplied. We had a special storage hub outside the town in the safest possible area that was close to the city, and then we used really pass to deliver it. And we've been in constant touch to see whether Russians were there. And that was also the moment of solidarity, because the neighboring communities having enemy on their land informed us whether the path that we chose to deliver food, medicine was safe today, or whether we should wait today and take it a little bit later. So the solidarity was felt along vertical lines with central authorities, with our neighbors. Everybody was helping each other. So solidarity is something that appeared in Ukraine during the war on a massive scale, and that's something that we should maintain. We have to preserve it. We have to keep helping each other and keep supporting each other. Slavutych has been liberated when the enemy was expelled from the enemy, was driven away from Kyiv oblast, from Chernihiv oblast. We are helping others. We have volunteers to deliver cargo, to support armed forces and other communities. And that's the act of solidarity, solidarity with civil society and armed forces. The level of trust, confidence that we have in armed forces and volunteers is probably the highest, and solidarity of local authorities, municipalities with them delivers absolutely incredible results. So we are in touch with volunteers and civil society, and they in their turn are in touch with armed forces. They know best what the needs at the front line are. Our partner city Energodar, they have been in occupation for 4 months. I can hardly imagine how you can live there. They need our support, and we have to stand in solidarity with them, at least to support them with words, because it is next to impossible to deliver humanitarian assistance there. So we are happy to host people from Energodar in Slavutych. We provide them with accommodation. We try to give them jobs, but the most important thing at this stage is the occupation of these territories, the victory of armed forces. And here we need solidarity of European partners, and we do appreciate all the support that we've been receiving so far. Cities for Cities platform is timely and necessary. The contacts with European partners, with our twin cities in Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, when talking to them, we hear one question: what kind of assistance do you need? We are ready to assist you. We are not tired of Ukraine, as it might seem. We know that we can help, and tell us what you need. So Cities for Cities platform allows us for submit our applications. The needs of different communities are different. Somebody lost housing, and we need temporary housing for those people who come back. Somebody lost the heating systems, so the boiler rooms should be rebuilt. Somebody needs assistance in renovating or fixing the hospital. Somebody needs assistance in fixing the school, because school year is approaching. So Cities for Cities platform, even if you are not a partner city to any European city, you can get engaged and submit your request and receive this assistance. And solidarity via this platform is very important. So we need to disseminate knowledge and information about the platform, so that these horizontal ties between municipalities will develop, because they are the most effective. Indeed, so the most effective cooperation is the cooperation between communities, whether there's logistical support or any other needs. All that could be met via this platform. Cities for Cities, that's a community from Europe helps the community that is occupied or was occupied, and that's crucial. And you can help your colleagues by saving their time. Okay, thank you. Let me conclude that I believe in armed forces of Ukraine. We are sure to prevail. Thank you. Thank you. Your example is really inspiration for all of us. Let me give the floor to the person who comes from the town that is seldom visited, but is known by everybody. That's a historically important town, but it's hard to get there. That's Khotyn, Chernivtsi region, mayor of Khotyn town, Andrii Dranchuk. Good afternoon, dear participants of today's round table. We are talking about Khotyn, Chernivtsi region, Khotyn community. I am mayor of Khotyn. As colleagues from other communities were saying, the communities that were occupied and exposed to shelling face huge challenges. Fortunately, we were not exposed to these horrors, but we face a different challenge. That's internally displaced persons. We have 40% of all people in the community that are people with IDP status. So that's the challenge that we have been facing since February 24. Nobody can tell you what to do, how to provide assistance to IDPs. There is, or rather, there was no clear-cut algorithm of actions, but we knew from day one that we had to provide all set of services to these people. People should be given every support they needed for them to feel comfortable. What have been done so far is the following. We try to take care of accommodation of IDPs that's individually designed or renovated houses. We use our local funds for renovation and refurbishment to provide housing for around 200, 300 of IDPs. All IDPs are registered in our community. The kids went to kids, go to school. People can make use of the healthcare services. So these services have been and are being provided. Another thing is relocation of business. So companies started searching for safer places to get relocated. So in our community, we have three major companies from Kharkiv. One produces bicycles. Another company is a sewing shop, and another is the one that produces plugs. We tried to create favorable business environment for them. We have set up a business hub. We provided them with offices free of charge. And these three businesses are in full operation in our community. Solidarity and cooperation, that was something that was felt by us thanks to our partners and twin cities in other countries. Naturally, we requested them for assistance, and immediately every partner tried to figure out the needs that we had to supply, whether that's product, hygiene, or medicine that we needed.
Таким ось так маємо на сьогоднішній день таку ситуацію.
That's the situation today. Like I say, IDPs is currently our biggest challenge. Otherwise, we are getting ready for the new school year, looking for shelters that can be used by students during air raid alerts. And thank you, Andrii, for your story coming from an important city of your. Next on the list is Secretary of Zhytomyr City Council. The floor is yours. Mr. Tymensky, can you copy me? Yes, we can. Greetings from Zhytomyr. Let me start by discussing positive developments. The solidarity between Ukrainian cities and with our international partners has contributed to a number of positive changes, developments in the past months. We signed a string of agreements, memoranda with our foreign partners. Some students can now attend studies abroad, and we hope that upon completion they'll return and help Ukraine recover. We have around 57,000 IDPs who've arrived from different regions of Ukraine, east, south. The city budget contributes to covering some rent and other daily needs of the IDPs. Of course, thanks to our international partners, we can even provide some aid to the IDPs. After the invasion started, we contacted our international partners as we wanted to help our kids and their mothers. We would like to say thank you to Poles, Austrians, Dutch, Italian partners who responded to our request. We are currently, in spite of the war, trying representatives of local governments visit foreign countries in order to tell them more about the situation in Ukraine, in Zhytomyr in particular, exchange views on how our partners can help us and where we be helpful. This is indeed a very important cooperation. The armed forces of Ukraine defend the territory of the country, and the municipalities, local governments try to help each other, and I hope that victory is nigh. Let's stick together. United, we will prevail. Thank you. Thank you, Victor. Zhytomyr, for many, is an example of how you can stay together, stay coherent, and not lose ties with other communities. Our next speaker is Mayor of Balta, Odessa region, Mr. Mazur. I have two personas on my gallery, and I hope at least one of them is the Mayor of Balta. Mr. Mazur. Something is wrong with Mr. Mazur's connection. No problem. We think that Mr. Lysenko can step in. Mayor of Sumy, Mr. Oleksandr. Yes, I can fill in. Hi to everyone, to Andrii. Thanks for the invitation. We're talking interaction between local and regional authorities, which is important because it is our unity that can help us defeat the enemy and handle the issues that remain with us. Sumy oblast, Shostka were shelled yesterday. Many buildings are damaged or destroyed. For instance, I won't burden you with the stats because, after all, the number of damaged property will differ from city to city, but it is the biggest issue for many. Let me once again say that interaction between all of us, including volunteers and territorial defense, is important. What are we focusing on now? Well, defense capacity, of course. Defense capacity of our city, preservation of infrastructure, protection of infrastructure, and maintaining them in, so to speak, working order. That's what we focus on. And recovery, damage to infrastructure. For instance, we have heat supply, electricity supply, road infrastructure damage, but like I say, we don't forget about defense capabilities. There are 9 formations that we support. We are building fortifications, improving them, and like I say, we are working towards multiple goals, and we are not afraid of having this multiplicity of tasks. For instance, we are renovating shelters, ventilation, etc. But once again, interaction, 250 million are committed to recovery of Sumy. 10 million will go to restoration of our housing. It is probably, well, it is an adequate amount. Mr. Tymoshenko was speaking earlier, and I think it is appropriate to help people replace windows, doors, and of course heating network, because people will have to prepare themselves for the cooler period. If the warehouses are completely damaged, we help people rent housing where they can. Unfortunately, we can't undertake capital renovation because the situation is not that stable, and I don't think that it would be the proper time to start capital renovation when shelling is on a daily schedule, so to speak. But we are finding ways to cope with the daily issues. And like I say, if we work together towards common decisions, if Mr. Tymoshenko is with us, I will address him as well. I'm trying to follow all the guidances. We're trying to participate in certain joint initiatives, and would very much like to be supported in our own initiatives. We're looking forward to international partners, sources of funding, sources of support, because we are well aware that it is only by joining efforts, by acting united, that we will be able to maintain infrastructure, maintain our defense capacity. Thank you, Oleksandr, for what I would call a sober assessment of the situation, and in particular, I like what you said about the ongoing aggression, which brings damage every day. Well, Mr. Mazur is with us from Balta, Odessa region. There is still another Mazur somewhere. Mr. Mazur, unmute your mic and the floor is yours. Yeah, well, there were minor glitches. Thank you very much for the opportunity, for the invitation. I'll try to give you a brief update on the situation in our community. We're in the north of Odessa region, close to Transnistria, self-proclaimed republic. It all started to us for in late February, when 11 of our brave ladies and gentlemen sacrificed their lives after the missiles hit. Currently, we're working on we have been working on stabilizing the situation, supporting deployment of territorial defense. In parallel, a great many, in excess of 10,000 of our residents and joined the army, so in the very first days. Aware of the situation, and in particular the proximity of Transnistria, we planned for improved communication with other local communities. Currently, we act like one united humanitarian front, and we support the armed forces of Ukraine. I will not give you every detail, of course, but what we did in the first 15 to 20 days was something that the relevant units appreciated. In addition, volunteer groups headquarters were set up that started to help the IDPs. Around 2,500 arrived to us, including 900 minors, so accommodation, housing was important. We also had to integrate them in schooling, provide jobs, but the efforts we took turned out to be effective. We have also provided assistance to deoccupied communities in Kyiv Oblast, Mykolaiv Oblast, in some areas of Kherson region. We provide assistance to armed army units, vehicles, uniforms, protective gear. We supplied in excess of 60 vehicles to our defenders in central, south, and north areas. Next, assistance of our partners, from our partners. I will not repeat what other colleagues of mine have said, but our friends from Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia gave us what was very important. This assistance was further channeled to those who needed it: Bashtanka, Bucha, Irpin, to name only a few. Dozens of tons of food, water, construction material, dozens of vehicles were sent to those communities to stabilize the situation. The situation is different, but, well, in many respects still the same. Shelling, bombardments. I'd like to recognize the effectiveness of our anti-aircraft defense. Jointly with the business, we managed to support our utility companies. But we are in the agricultural area, and it is important to pay adequate attention to, well, harvesting. The president spoke about that, and we keep informing our residents about different activities, different initiatives to help certain districts or populations or armed forces of Ukraine.
Our focus at the moment, and we use City for City platform, we are focused on weapon supply, and we spoke about that with Katowice to secure our victory, and we talk about that with our twin cities so that they encourage their associations and their governments so that they push them to provide more assistance, military assistance for us. We are working on communication channels so that we, being a logistical hub, would improve coordination and streamline assistance that we are receiving so that it is reaching the front line quickly. That's just the most important highlights that I wanted to deliver. Thank you. Thank you for detailed presentation that you provided us to your community. And we all need these details because some towns, some cities are not in the limelight, and we need to know what is happening there because there is a lot of important work being done there. Let's move over to our next session, that's European Partnership and Cooperation. And it is right and symbolic, and I'm happy to give the floor to Bernd Föhringer, who is the mayor of Sindelfingen city in Germany, who is one of co-organizers of this roundtable. He's also the president of the Congress Chamber of Local Authorities. We planned 1 hour for this session. We have 7 participants here, so 7 minutes. That's the maximum of the time that we can give you.
Okay, so Thank you. Thank you very much, dear colleagues and friends. Thank you very much for inviting me to this round-table discussion on European partnerships and cooperation. I think that's a crucial point, cooperation and partnerships at European level, especially in times of crisis. So in this regard, I welcome the initiative of a Congress and the AUC in organizing this round-table. I'm joining you at a later stage because I participated in a quite similar panel earlier today, almost parallel, organized by the German Federal Minister of Economic Cooperation and Development. And it's also on city partnerships. Yeah, so it's in Germany, we try to find more partners for partnerships. So we mainly discussed how the local level can be connected even further to provide tailored and targeted support to the Ukrainian cities. And as president of a chamber of local authorities at the Congress of the Council of Europe and as the Lord Mayor of the city of Zhytomyr, I would like to take this opportunity and talk to you about our joint initiatives about the digital platform Cities for Cities. So the idea of a matching platform was born at the very beginning of this terrible war against Ukraine. And our Ukrainian colleagues in the Congress of the Council of Europe asked us to look for ways to support Ukrainian cities and regions bilaterally. The starting point is critical and was discussed already on our panels this afternoon. We need to provide support and aid from a local and regional level to a local and regional level. So that's the core idea of this platform. So we need to a national level, the international relief organizations, but we should help one-to-one on a local and regional levels, because mayors and regional level also we have a first point of contact for citizens, especially in times of war and crisis. And we had a lot of examples what are the challenges of our colleagues in the Ukraine. So we need to provide concrete and tailored aid that is needed the most, and where we local and regional authorities can support the best. So that's the idea. I myself was at the Ukrainian border in Chelmsford, our Polish twin town, right at the beginning of the war. And what I say, sure, is I saw the sadness and suffering in the face of the people fleeing the war. But I saw also and realized as well that we local politicians can help in a different way than our governments and our international organizations. And I just saw it again when I was a study visit, come just back from Poland and especially Warsaw and Lublin last 2 days. As a local level, we are able to respond fast with a dedicated engagement of citizens to the need of our European cities. And so together with a local IT company, we developed a very simple but effective matching platform with the support of a Congress of local authorities. The idea is, as I already mentioned, is to match 2 cities or 2 regions in order to provide fast and uncomplicated aid. I know there are sometimes you already have some twinning cooperations, but Cities for Cities is a possibility also for our cities who don't have at the moment a twinning cooperation with cities in the Ukraine. And so that's a possibility by Cities for Cities to get in contact and to deliver food, material, whatever is needed, medical aid to our colleagues and friends in Ukraine. Sure, we need our political solidarity. We have our declarations also as a Congress. That's very important. Also on a national level, but it's also important to show solidarity in concrete actions. And so that's the idea of Cities for Cities to get into contact. Just some examples. Some more are mentioned already this afternoon or later on. I'm a mayor of a city, Zhytomyr, with about 65,000 inhabitants, and we organized by this platform already 10 deliveries to the Ukraine, each delivery with a 40-ton truck with a variety of supplies from groceries to generators and more. And so we could help, for example, cities of Sumy, Krasnograd and Mykolaiv. Just some examples of my city. But even more important is that other cities can get into contact with cities in Ukraine. So for example, just on Monday this week, there was a meeting of the city of Dortmund with the city of Mykolaiv, directly in our Polish twin town in Chelmsford, the Polish-Ukrainian border. And this was established, this contact by the platform Cities for Cities. And so our colleagues at Dortmund, they delivered vehicles, our goods to help our colleagues in Ukraine. But I'm sure we will tell you more about this. So what was initiated by a platform, and it's a very good example, and I hope many more cities will join the initiative to help our colleagues in the Ukraine. So this potential should be used, supported, and expanded further. So please, colleagues, join the Cities for Cities platform and get in touch with another Ukrainian city or region. Please register. It's very easy, and when you create a profile, it's no binding obligation. There are no criteria. Even small cities can help other cities. So every activity counts. So it's just entering into contact. Looking a little bit in the future, moving forward, we are thinking about how we can develop further on this platform. So we have different talks with our European institutions, how we can combine activities to offer even more help to our Ukrainian colleagues. And we also think about how we can distribute the knowledge via the platform, for example. And also, how can we support all these cooperation activities? So we have a lot of discussions. How can we develop the platform? But the most important thing is not to have too much complexity. Just to start, just to register. And every city, we are a small city. Every city, like we, smaller, bigger, can just do the same. So please feel invited and register on the platform and let us show our concrete solidarity, concrete action with our friends in Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Danke sehr, Herr Voringer.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Voringer. He and his town of 65,000 people, that's an example how even small towns can be really visible on the European map, whether it's political, humanitarian, or humane map. So we know the name Baden-Württemberg because that's exactly where Sindelfingen is geographically located. Okay, we are expanding our horizons and knowledge about the towns that we know from our childhood. And Bucha is one of the towns that I remember from childhood. I often go to Nemyshaevo. Part of my family comes from Nemyshaevo. Bucha is an example not only of perseverance and suffering that Ukrainian people go through, but it's also the example how you can cope with that with respect. I give the floor to the mayor of Bucha, Anatoly Fedoruk. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Indeed. Well, you know what? It's not the popularity or fame that I dreamt about for my town, but we have what we have. My town, similar to other towns of Ukraine, saw the war, saw the huge challenges and sufferings, and the aggression of Russian occupiers that lasted for 1 month, that's what we felt. 418 of tortured civilians. Well, they didn't deserve what happened to them. They didn't commit anything, but it was Russian occupiers, and they did what they did. 2,500 infrastructural objects, multi-storied houses, social infrastructural premises were intentionally destroyed by occupiers during the months of occupation. Naturally, after liberation of Bucha, north of Kiev oblast by Ukrainian armed forces, we started rebuilding infrastructure. And it was very important for us to feel and have the support and assistance of our partners. And we had really a long and fruitful cooperation. That's Polish towns, Chernivtsi, Lithuanian town of Palanga, other partners, Hungarian town Vatsvaras, from the very first days of the occupation. And even during the occupation, we were in touch with them and tried to develop the list of necessities so that after liberation we could immediately start providing services to people. My colleagues acted the way they would act if they were in occupation, and understanding a realization of the challenges, well, made them act in a way that didn't leave room for bureaucracies. They didn't ask me, what can I do for you? But they put themselves in my shoes and they acted, and they supplied generators, medical equipment, even used equipment was supplied to us. But we were so happy because the enemy destroyed virtually everything that could be used to provide services. There were 7 cars of ambulances that we managed to kind of protect because they were used for evacuation. So from the very first day of the occupation, of liberation, I started receiving the support from municipalities of European cities. It's not just me, not my community, but all people in my community feel this support. And the initiative came out of solidarity, not through diplomatic missions, not through the statements, but just because our twin cities, our partner cities understood the needs. That's Portugal town, Cascais, and I'm really happy that Carlos Carreiras came up with the initiative to establish partnership relations, and the agreement was drafted immediately, so support was provided immediately, and I appreciate that. I do appreciate the care and support that they provided to the Ukrainians that they hosted in the community, and all the measures that they undertake to attract the attention of the entire world to the needs of refugees. Bergamo, in the north of Italy, they extended their support. Bergamo was the first affected by COVID pandemic, and that prompted Georgi Gori, the mayor of the town, to come up with the initiative and extend the hand of assistance to the town of Bucha, and their helping hand was really crucial for us. We spoke on the phone, and he wanted to come to Bucha, and we have agreement and cooperation signed with them, and we started building the administrative center of administrative services in Havrylivka. We are rebuilding kindergarten in Havrylivka. The kindergarten was completely destroyed as a result of shelling of Russia's. Geography of cooperation of Bucha municipality is expanding, and it's not city-to-city type of cooperation, but partnership relations that we see developing. For instance, first we started cooperating with Polish town, and that expanded over to Germany, Bardish-Bladberg town, and we signed an agreement with them. They came up with the initiative via our Polish partners, and we are waiting for the visit of the mayor of Bardish-Bladberg to come to Bucha. Every agreement that we sign brings specific and tangible results when it comes to rebuilding of social infrastructure, renovation of the damaged premises and houses and construction. It was very important that we could learn experience of other towns. Kachevi in Slovenia implemented ambitious plan of industrial park creation and creation of new jobs. We started learning this experience before the war, but within the framework of ULIT project, within the project of Bridges of Trust, we learned more about their experience. We have an ambitious project, Bucha Technical Hub, where we want to create jobs for early occupied territories. We want to create jobs for people there, and the city of Kyiv is really keen on making sure that this project is implemented because it creates new jobs, many jobs. Territorial community of Bucha is cooperating with different municipalities in different countries. We received the proposal from Fusenburg, Austria. They came up with the initiative to sign an agreement on cooperation. Fusenburg municipality wants to assist us in construction of kindergarten in Warsaw. Kindergarten was destroyed by Russians there too. So based on our needs and thanks to the cooperation between municipalities that either was started before the war or is being in the making now, we are working on all critically important infrastructural objects. And that's either their renovation, reconstruction, or building from scratch. So thus we are building our plans, and we are not waiting for the public funds to be allocated or money from the funds to be allocated. We are working on them on their own. We are focused on the infrastructure that is vitally important. We use local budgets and other foundations. Bergamo, for instance, their foundation, it has a very good experience accumulated in the north of Italy. These were the challenges that they faced as a result of pandemic. So this foundation developed a set of initiatives and a set of projects based on these initiatives are being implemented in our community and neighboring communities as well. Based on the experience that we have accumulated so far, I can say that we can provide for livelihood in our community. We can restore infrastructure, the operational activity of public utility companies, and we are going to be ready for new school year. We are going to be ready for winter with heating, and that's all thanks to the City for City initiative. Large major cities, and when I say large and major, I mean not only the size but budgets as well. Large cities of Italy, Portugal, well, they are big, but we are small. We are a little bit more than 30,000 people, but the cooperation with them makes us really proud. And it's great that they have chosen us not for historic value or the size of the community. For instance, Dresden came up with their initiative, and we are currently negotiating cooperation projects with them too. So the fact that they chose us shows that it's not history or size that mattered, but just the desire to help the city. And this cooperation is so critically important for us because that will make it possible for us to rebuild, to become stronger, and be stronger not only in defending our country, but European values as well. We do understand that after the victory, northern neighbor is not going to disappear anywhere, and we have to be economically strong to defend our country. So I am happy that my partners and colleagues from different cities extend their helping hand. But we don't want to be pleading for assistance. We don't want to be beggars. We are ready to cooperate and be in dialogue to make sure that businesses of these countries and municipalities see advantages so that it is beneficial for them to work in Bucha in Ukraine. We are open for cooperation.
Дякую, пане Анатолію. Ну, не дарма ж я сказав, що не лише з повагою.
Thank you, Anatoly. It wasn't accidental that I said it was not just respect, but great hope that I invited you to take the floor. And by the way, Bucha was once nominated for the administrative center of Kyiv oblast. Who knows? Mr. Fedoruk mentioned Kashkaish, and João Balsemao, advisor on environment from Kashkaish, to take the floor.
Good afternoon. I am the deputy mayor in Kashkaish, and Mayor Kyrylo could not be here. And so he asked me to speak on his behalf. And it's very warming to see the local governance come together in this way. It was a great initiative of the Council of Europe to organize this meeting, because it really demonstrates the power and the role of local authorities when there is a crisis. So Kashkaish has tried to be helping actively since the onset of the war. We have sent humanitarian aid, over 100 tons, and we are receiving many refugees from Ukraine. We don't call them refugees. We call these people our guests. Before the war, there were 900 Ukrainian citizens in Kashkaish. Now there are more, 2,700 guests. All of them are being taken care of and integrated. The children are going to Ukrainian school online, or they are going to Portuguese school. And everyone who needs a house has a place to stay. We help everyone with bureaucracy and having the right paperwork when they arrive in Kashkaish. And we also want everyone to feel welcome beyond the paperwork. So we have organized outings and with the Ukrainian guests. Last week, we had the pleasure of having in Kashkaish the mayor of Irpin and the deputy mayor of Bucha, and to meet their teams in person. And it was with great pleasure that we were able to sign a commitment to help each city with €500,000 to aid with recovering education. So in schools, rebuilding schools, we believe this is really one of the first stones of rebuilding a community is schools. And we also agreed that there would be transfer of knowledge. So we are keen to learn from these cities about all sorts of issues, including resilience. And we are keen to share our knowledge with you in whatever issue. it's really important to demonstrate that cooperation and solidarity are much more than just words. And it has been a pleasure to be able to materialize these words with Ukrainian cities. And I mentioned the power of cities, and if we could just imagine that if more cities could bring more aid, different kinds of aid, to more Ukrainian cities, if this network could be even stronger, it would make the efforts of war and refugees and recovery so much more solid. I want to focus on recovery now, but we must not forget that the war is still ongoing and many displaced people are still needing help. So if we can replicate the aid of more cities, more European cities with Ukrainian cities, it would be the ideal scenario. And so Qashqai is here. We are here to help and to continue aiding and also to continue sharing and learning. And thank you for this opportunity.
Дякую вам, сеньора Джоанна. Це дуже важливо, що практично з іншого кінця Європи ми і чуємо, і бачимо таке ставлення до
It is very important to hear from that distant end of Europe to hear about your attitude to Ukraine and Ukrainians. With this, over to Mr. Senkevich, Mayor of Mykolaiv. I see that he's joined us. Mr. Senkevich, the floor is yours. Hi, how can you copy me? Great. Good afternoon. I'll be speaking Ukrainian now. And greeting all the participants, I would like to say thank you to our colleagues who are with us today, who sympathize with us, who help us in Ukraine. Before the war, there were 500,000 people living in Mykolaiv. Today, less than half, 230,000. Let me take the opportunity to say thank you to those who accommodated my fellows in Ukraine and elsewhere. In Burgas, there is a community of refugees from Mykolaiv. There are others in Romania, Germany, Poland, of course. And this is probably the most important thing. Since day one of the war, I have been encouraging residents of Mykolaiv to leave the city. In the past 133 days, we were spared shelling only on 22 of these. It was recently that I heard explosions. Lots of facilities have been damaged, including infrastructural facilities and others, such as the headquarters of regional administration. Several buildings were destroyed by precise hits. A couple of days ago, community center of ours was destroyed. Of course, the Russian propaganda submitted that it was used for the military, but it is impossible to hide the truth because passers-by use their mobile phones to take photos of what indeed showed the remainers of makeup rooms, pianos, etc. It was totally destroyed. Fortunately, no victims, just 4 persons were injured. During these times, we have to remove the debris, some of the machines we use to this, and have also been destroyed. We receive cranes, loaders, trucks from international partners, and we thank them for these. The day before yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, our partners at Helm transferred vehicles donated by Dortmund. Some of our fleet was provided to the army so they can use it. The war is near, just 20 kilometers away from Mykolaiv, and of course our building machines that we used to have at our disposal are now working as the engineering battalion for the army. They help build fortifications, dig trenches, build different checkpoints or other facilities at the front line. This means that lots of this machinery is damaged, destroyed, and we therefore thank our partners for every piece of such equipment. Warsaw delivered buses, some of which are used by the armed forces of Ukraine to move around personnel. So every piece of equipment is used outside the city or in the city. In spite of the fact that there currently are only less than half of our population in place. Utilities, water supply companies keep working. We have water, gas, electricity, and public transit, streetcars, buses, trolley buses. Of course, we have fewer buses now, but probably some of our partners will respond to our request to send us a few when they can. Today, we are in the process of signing memoranda with Brussels and Hanover, thanks to Nørlov, Trieste, Levno, and other cities that responded and sent us their assistance. Our partners from Romania were one of the first to call us and send humanitarian aid, say food, canned food included. Well, Mykolaiv is not in siege. We are, however, shelled and bombarded from Kherson oblast. Typically, they are cluster bombs and munitions forbidden by international conventions. They are used solely to kill people. Typically, it starts earlier in the morning or during the night. Therefore, the number of victims is not so high. 563 persons have been injured, of whom 66, if I'm not mistaken, are kids. Cooperation at the level of communities, municipalities is very effective because central government, central executive authorities, ministries, state administrations are at times too bureaucratic, and you ask for assistance. When it arrives, it is, no longer needed. Our cooperation at the level of the Congress associations is much more effective. And by the way, we never forget to document every piece we receive and to demonstrate that nothing is wasted. Some cities are still occupied and we can't work with them, Kherson being one of them, but I'm sure that due to our armed forces and our help to them, we will liberate them and once found ourselves within the pre-war borders of Ukraine. We have no right to lose time. We have to plan for the future, to plan for recovery, to plan for cooperation. And not always this cooperation should be confined to funding. Sometimes approach is important, master plans, new urban development plans, because after all, war gives us a chance to review the census, the missions, and establish new ways between territories to cooperate. There they extract, here they process, and of course the approach to use of fuels and various resources. After the Russians destroyed water pipeline, it took us a month to restore some water supply. Unfortunately, this supply is not potable drinking water supply, it's technical water. We have no capacity to remove salts and other additives. Technical water is therefore used to wash dishes, to bathe, not to drink. So with this, I would like to say thank you to everyone and encourage everyone to help us revise our erstwhile approaches. It is time that we started shape new workforce in line with the modern standards, because we will need people to help us recover after the war.
Thanks a lot for turning Mykolaiv into symbol of resistance and the town that is able to rebuild. If you say that you're going to be better, that means that Solyanina, my Varvarivka are going to be better as well. And Vagira Panse wouldn't see the tail cut. The zoo is back in service. It is open and our animals look good and can't wait to see the visitors there. Will come to Mykolaiv and Mykolaiv Zoo, and that's one of the best zoos in Ukraine. Okay, it was Oleksandr Sienkiewicz, mayor of Mykolaiv. Now let's move over to Dortmund, Germany. Claudia Schutz, Office for International Relations, the city of Dortmund. Over to you, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to contribute to this roundtable today. I would like to share today our experience with the Cities for Cities platform. The City Council, as well as the city administration of the city of Dortmund, strongly condemn the Russian war against Ukraine and show solidarity with the Ukrainian population. The desire to help was very strong in Dortmund from the very beginning. However, since we did not have a partnership relationship with a Ukrainian city so far, we didn't know how we could exactly help directly beyond classical refugee aid in Dortmund. That is when we learned about the Cities for Cities platform, which intends to link cities in Ukraine with a need help with European cities that offer assistance. At that time, we already knew that there was the wish to donate vehicles from different municipal departments to Ukrainian cities to help them with reconstruction work. We registered at the platform, but also sought for help directly at the city of Sindelfingen, who was one of the partners that helped to initiate the platform. Through the extremely friendly and helpful support of the city of Sindelfingen, we were then put in contact with the city of Mykolaiv, which urgently needed these vehicles due to the fierce attacks by Russia. The city of Sindelfingen also supported us in this process by handling the customs processes and organizing a pickup point in the Polish city of Chelm. So we donated a total of 10 utility vehicles, 2 fire trucks, and other material donations for reconstruction work. The first part of the donation left Dortmund last Wednesday. The Consul General of Ukraine, Irina Shum, visited us on this day of departure as well. The official handover in the Polish border town of Chelm to representatives of the Mykolaiv city administration took place this Monday. Tomorrow, the fire trucks will also be sent on their way to the Polish border. I would like to quote our mayor. I'm very saddened that such aid deliveries have become necessary, but I'm also very proud that cities stick together and support each other across borders. I believe that we can best overcome great challenges together, and especially the defense of democratic and open societies now requires our cohesion. The Cities for Cities platform enables cities to cooperate and to get in touch directly and provide precise support. This is an enormous help, especially for those cities that have not had yet personal contact to Ukrainian cities. I would especially like to thank the city of Sindelfingen, which has given us a wonderful support. I hope that the vehicles, which have already done a good job for the Dortmund city community, can now also help the city community of Mykolaiv to reconstruct their future. I think that this roundtable has shown today how Ukraine is fighting and working for full of hope for a European future. Even though if the present is currently dark and sad, and this touches us very deeply. This platform is therefore a wonderful way for European cities to support the Ukrainian cities and accompany them on their way to the future. So thank you, and our very heartfelt greetings to Ukraine and especially the city of Mykolaiv. Thank you.
Дякую, пані Клаудіо. Ми цінуємо вашу допомогу і ваше ставлення.
Thanks, Claudia. We do appreciate your assistance and your attitude. And here, let me give the floor to Микола Боровець, Mayor of Novograd-Volynskiy, that's Zhytomyr oblast. Thank you. You said that I'm going to be the last to speak here. That's an honor to me, but let me start by thanking all of you to have this opportunity to participate in the discussion in this round table. This round table is a great opportunity to present, to share the experience, but that's a huge opportunity to express gratitude to our European partners, to communities, to people, to municipalities that assist us so much in these difficult times. We are in the north of Ukraine, Zhytomyr oblast. That's 300 kilometers away from Lviv, 250 kilometers from Kyiv. That's just in the middle of so-called corridor. I'm saying this, that it doesn't matter which route you take, but you normally pass Novograd-Volynski, and that's why I invite everybody to come to us to exchange experience. And today's roundtable is an opportunity to exchange experiences that will help us to move ahead. Talking about the Cities for Cities platform, well, that's a huge opportunity of partnership. We have Lodz, Bochne, Olhek, Polish cities, that's partners that we've been cooperating with for a while. Today we heard Mayor Föhringer, Mayor of Sindelfingen. Let me thank you for establishing this platform. That's a huge opportunity to learn and exchange experience and get assistance. We, Novograd-Volynski, submitted our request and we were assisted by Sindelfingen. We do appreciate it so much. Let me focus on several critical themes. The first is partner cities and foundations, international organizations that were especially active during the time of war when providing assistance, targeted assistance that we needed so much. Council of Europe office has always been there for us. UNDP, we have been cooperating with them for 10 years. They help us in resolving lots of challenges. German agency, NEFCO financial company, we have been implementing the project to assist IDPs with them worth 2.5 million euro. We are constructing housing for IDPs. But the thing that we should talk about now, and all mayors that spoke before me underscored that, today we need this sense of solidarity of all partners, municipalities, cities, and international organizations. A week ago, we had several meetings with representatives of international organizations in Polish cities and in Slovakia and Italy. Delegation composed of business representatives and my deputies went there, and we came up with the initiative of having investment forums organized. For instance, we can have a meeting in Poland and we can tell them what our needs are, and representatives of our partner organizations and cities would know what our needs are, and matching our needs and their means and resources would deliver results. I had a meeting with the Italian businesses that's partner cities in Italy that want to rebuild the surgical unit of the hospital in our town. And they also want to get engaged in the construction of rehabilitation center in our town. We do appreciate all the assistance that have been provided so far and that we are receiving now. Our town has a military unit stationed here, and 10% of the people living in our town joined armed forces. So that's dozens of thousands of people that live in our town that work or serve in the armed forces. That's why medical assistance, treatment of injured and rehabilitation of wounded is of primary importance for us. Every day we see dozens of wounded brought to our town for treatment, and we need to create all conditions for providing healthcare services to them. So we need to finish construction of the surgical unit, and rehabilitation center should be built because that's an element of their recovery. And I really appreciate the assistance of all partners that respond to our needs. I'm sure that we'll be able to rebuild Ukraine. We have been granted EU candidate status, and experience of European cities will be useful to learn. We want to know more what they did to resolve the challenges on the way to their accession, as well as the experience of building and rebuilding. We stay open for any cooperation and partnership. And I believe that when we say glory to Ukraine, the entire world responds glory to the heroes. Glory to the heroes. Well, naturally, it's not only us who learn European experience, but Ukrainian experience is shared, and a lot can be learned from us as well. Well, I believe that Mykola Borovets kind of summarized what we have been discussing, but I still want to give the floor to somebody who represents powerful European associations. And that's why I really want to give the floor to them. You have 3 minutes each. And if somebody wants to ask questions, please raise your hands. Actually, could you please raise questions in the chat? Annika Erningen-Jabsen, the head of the migration group, that's Conference of Peripheral Marine Regions. Annaby Janssen, Madam Annaby Janssen, are you with us? Raise your hand, please, so that we could see you. Unless you do, hopefully she will raise her hand. Okay, so I see you. I need technical assistance here. Okay. Aniko?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes. We hear you, and now we even see you.
Okay. So, as you said, Mr. Chair, I'm speaking on behalf of the CPMR, Sense of Peripheral Maritime Regions of Europe. And I first want to say that we welcome the EU's decision to grant Ukraine candidate status. It's an important decision. Member regions of the CPMR stand by Ukraine in full solidarity. In March, the Bureau adopted a statement in which we condemn this unprovoked attack on Ukraine and express our support for Ukrainian local and regional authorities and for the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Right now, many of our member regions are fully mobilized to ensure the reception and integration of Ukrainian refugees. We are channeling solidarity efforts of citizens for humanitarian aid that is currently so needed. My region, Skåne, for instance, has been contributing to the Swedish National and donating medical supplies when asked for organized NGOs. And of course, there has also been a massive support from citizens, municipalities, in our region. Ahead, longer term, regional and local authorities also have a role to play in the reconstruction efforts. As an organization with a maritime focus, the CPMR is very concerned in particular about the Black Sea area, and we stand with you, members of the CPMR. The destruction and blockade of Ukraine's ports is a global disaster. Together, we should help Ukraine's coastal regions and their major ports, Kherson, Mariupol, to return to their center in the world's economy. Players in Ukraine need our support to rebuild vital infrastructures which will accompany them in their capacity programs for regional administrations with the support of the European Union. One other important issue we also need to reflect on is we might cooperate when the time comes for the repatriation of refugees we are hosting in our territories to ensure their smooth reintegration. Some regional and local authorities were already engaged in trainings and partnerships with the in Ukraine before the war. The cooperation in the climate of an ongoing conflict needs to be organized, increase impact. Regions and local authorities use these opportunities when relevant to organize bilateral, collective, and concerted actions through initiatives by institutions rather than trying to organize individually. We therefore applaud initiatives like the Cities for Cities platform at the European level, providing a common framework for regional and local authorities to ensure greater effectiveness and avoid dispersion and duplication. Regions have the competence and willingness to act. In the framework of the European Commission's Read Ukraine platform, formally presented by Ursula von der Leyen in Lugano this week, the CPMR will be pushing for financial support to partnerships between.
Dear Annika, I'm sorry. I'm
almost finished.
No, that's not about the length of your address. It's about the quality of the sound.
Okay. You hear me at all?
At the moment, perfectly. But before this, we only heard every second syllable.
I'm sorry to hear that, but I don't think it's a good idea for me to retake it. I'll continue where I was, I think, after all. Or?
It wasn't as bad for people who understand English, but for translation purposes. It was. So
I restart with regions have the competence. Slower. I think that's the problem. I speak too fast. Regions have the competences and willingness to act. In the framework of the European Commission's rebuild platform, formally presented by President Ursula von der Leyen this week, the CPMR will be pushing for support to benefit cooperation partnerships between EU and Ukrainian regions through specific programs and under the Rebuild Ukraine facility and the Neighborhood Development and International Cooperation Instrument of Europe. This would enable us to make meaningful contributions to these efforts. Could I reiterate our full support to Ukrainian colleagues and the need for regional and local authorities, both in the EU and in Ukraine, and the values of democracy. Thank you for your attention. I hope at least some things that I said.
yeah, thank you very much. Whatever the problems with hearing you, or rather with listening to you were, there were no problems in hearing the gist of what you said. Thank you very much. І зараз я запрошую до слова представника ще однієї дуже важливої.
With this, I would like to invite a representative of yet another important European association, Magnus Berntsen, from the Assembly of European Regions. Mr. Magnus, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the floor. And yes, my name is Magnus Berntsen. I'm the president of the Assembly of European Regions. I'm also the regional minister for environment in my home region of Västra Götaland in Sweden. And I must say I'm very grateful for being here today and listen to all the witness that we have got from mayors and regional representatives from Ukraine. That really warms our hearts, of course. And what you are doing is incredible. And of course, we are in full solidarity and in full support for what we can do from different European regions and cities. And I want to start by just thanking you for that, and also for being so, for sharing your situation. It makes it easier also for us on the local and regional ground to express that to our citizens, because we see a lot of solidarity that goes not only on the political side, but definitely goes down to every citizen in our regions that want to do what they can, and to do the right things. We need to listen to you, so we know that. AER, the Assembly of European Regions, supports in the way we can. Of course, many of our member regions support with humanitarian aid initiatives, and we managed that also by AER member regions from several countries, from Austria, Belgium, France, and Sweden, etc. And of course, this is something that has been done in different ways from different countries, from different regions. But I just want to express that everyone want to do what they can to help. And that's why I think also it is really good that we can cooperate in these kind of initiatives like Cities for Cities and the works done through the Congress of the Council of Europe, and through other initiatives like the ones made from the Committee of Regions, for example. We absolutely support that in AER and take part in all these platforms. And we support the further European integration of Ukraine, as well as the access of Ukraine's local and regional authorities to the European networks. AER has recently approved applications of the regions, oblast of Lviv, Chernivtsi and Zaporizhzhia to become full members of AER, as well as additional associated members. And AER takes a role in capacity building and facing the exchange of know-how between EU and Ukrainian regions on an equal footing. For instance, the AER online conference on the 17th of June, we shared information on ongoing initiatives and available support to Ukrainian regions and heard from Ukrainian regions what they need and provided examples and experience from EU regions in their support to Ukraine. Typically, they have competences in welcoming refugees, in humanitarian aid, and of course, we also discussed which approaches work best and providing perspectives in terms of exchange and collaboration for Ukrainian regions. And of course, our regions are also preparing for when we can take even bigger steps in the rebuilding of local and regional communities. I just want to again thank you for this initiative and for the strong message that has been given here today. And I want to thank the ministers and the mayors and the regional representatives for the governors and others for taking their very much valuable time for having this conversation with us, because we will do our best in providing to distributing your message also to our citizens, and that of course it has a totally other meaning when it comes directly from you. So thank you for that, and we are in full solidarity with you, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bernson, and may I tell you that the meaning acquires also different dimensions when you are with us in solidarity. And another person whom I would like to address everyone here is Dorte Nielsen, the Executive Director of Eurocities. And I see that the hand is raised. And I see that this person has been accorded the right to speak.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, very good. Yes, Dorte.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to make a brief intervention here. So my name is Dorte Nielsen. I'm Executive Director from Eurocities. Eurocities is the network of larger European cities, working very much at sort of an EU level remit, but our membership is the more than 200 European cities with more than 250,000 inhabitants. But it's been a most useful session, this one. It's very useful to listen to the testimonies from the Ukrainian side and also from the European cities who have shared their experiences of providing aid and support over the past months. And it's been useful and also very moving to listen to testimony to the added value of the city-to-city collaboration that is of utmost importance and will continue to be that in the months ahead. We have certainly welcomed in Eurocities the City for City platform. We've promoted it to our membership as well, and we hope to see many more cities engaged in it. We've also used our own digital platforms for the purpose of sharing information between cities, for sharing the needs from the Ukrainian cities, and also for our membership to inspire each other in terms of taking actions. We've had meetings in May and June where colleagues represented here have also participated. So between our political leadership and with our Ukrainian partners, so the Association of Ukrainian Cities, and also with the mayor of Bucha, which was a pleasure to see again here today. I think we have a really good ground for collaboration and strong support in the months ahead between our associations, and we have agreed on a set of principles, and also we have a principal agreement on a memorandum of understanding where we as Eurocities are willing to take, of course, a coordinating role between our membership and the collaboration with the Ukrainian cities to spread this support for also the cities that are maybe not so well known and further ahead from further away from those cities. So we spread these partnerships across Ukraine as best possible. So we're hoping to also formally sign this memorandum of understanding as soon as possible. And I wanted just to echo this. The points made by the Mayor Bucha in terms of achieving specific and tangible results, so that which is something that is reached by each contact with between cities and the agreements in these city-to-city collaboration, which is definitely something that's worth emphasizing on our side as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity to listen in, to listen to the testimonies, and also just to share briefly where we are and how and that we are absolutely, and with our political leadership, backing the continued support for the Ukrainian cities. Thank you.
Дуже дякую, Дорте, за те, що ви поділилися з нами цими новинами.
Thanks a lot for sharing your perspective. That's very important for us, because awareness, that's one of the means with the help of which we use in our resistance, and that's one of the elements of our survival in this horrible war. The list of those who wanted to express some comments and speak seems to be the one that we've exhausted, but if there are representatives of other international organizations or anybody else who wants to express some comments, we can do that. You can have a minute or two. I'm just checking if there is anybody who wants to say something. But before we actually close, let me conduct really a short polling. That's really going to take only a few minutes of your time. Those who spoke today, my request to
excuse me,
Martin Guillermo.
Attention, yes, Martin Guillermo has asked for the floor.
Yes. I have just said that I noticed Martin Guillermo Ramirez, and you may address us, Mr. Ramirez.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Moderator, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Kulikov, Mr. Moderator, thank you for making this happening, and thank you also to the interpreters to make possible this exchange. And of course, thanks very much to the Congress for making this possible to have this exchange. As usual, it's impressive when we have direct testimonies from those who are on the ground, which this illustrates very well what we are trying to figure out from the distance. Just a few words to show our full support, as the rest of our colleagues, to the initiatives which are being implemented by the Congress, in particular the Cities for Cities initiative. We are, even if we are addressing border regions, particularly regions and in border areas, we are promoting very much this initiative, because we think that this direct contact between the Western cities and the cities in Ukraine will have an enormous and synergical effect. We are even trying to get some inspiration to do something similar at the regional level with border regions in Ukraine. We were inspired by this, but we know of our size, so we try to take part in small actions in some border regions where we can be more or less, we can have some impact, while we try to support major actions like the one I would like to stress this last week, that was launched by the Committee of the Regions, where an alliance of Ukrainian regions and cities was launched during the plenary of the committee, thinking of the reconstruction. We know that we can support now, but we're also thinking, like as many of you, that probably the end of the conflict will come soon, and then we will have to make even a renewed effort for the reconstruction at all levels, municipal, regional, national. And even in the meantime, we have to support our colleagues from Ukraine to join in the best conditions the European Union. So here we are, and let's hope that very soon we will be talking only about reconstruction and not only about the conflict. Thanks a lot.
Дякую, пане Рамірес. Було варто.
Thanks a lot. Ramirez. And then the experiment that I wanted to have, we spoke a lot about this. We mentioned a lot of really important scenes, but sometimes one word is much more meaningful in comparison with the 20 or 30 words said before. So my request to you, could you please recap or summarize today's discussion? It's not a request to Mr. Kiefer or Slobozhan. Could you please, the other participants, could you please summarize today's discussion with one word? And the speakers of today's roundtable, could you please just say this one word? What do you feel based on the discussion that we had today?
Форінгер.
First to take this opportunity is Bernd Floringer.
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity. So will be rather short here. So thank you for all your participation, for your contribution. I think
And one most important word.
One word for politician, that's really a challenge. The local cooperation, direct cooperation makes a difference.
Thank you.
Very short.
Thank you. Danke я бачу, що Анніка хоче сказати.
Annika has the word to say, and
I think
I was notified that her today's contribution will be distributed by email.
my one word is solidarity.
Thank you. Микола Боровець, Новоград-Волинський.
Микола Боровець, Новоград-Волинський, your word.
Пане Миколо.
Mr. Боровець.
Я хочу подякувати всім європейським партнерам за підтримку.
I'd like to thank all European partners for their support to Ukrainian support. I will edit the speeches. Mr. Chaus, Chernihivska Regional State Administration, if he is with us, still with us. Viacheslav, one word from you, one single word. I know that every word of yours is very valuable, but give us one today. All branches of the government should work together towards their ends, united for our victory. Mr. Fedoruk, Bucha Mayor. He could have already left, but we will remember. Let me pick. I can't see. Anyway, let's call it a day for this little experiment and go back to what is a traditional but very important part of any meeting. Secretary General Andreas Kiefer of the Council of Europe's Congress, whose word is as important. So, conclusions and next steps.
Thank you very much, and really thanks to all participants, contributors. It has shown that within Ukraine, our friends are united, and outside Ukraine, the friends of are united. And if one result of today's meeting is that we have built new bridges, and the idea was that many of us have friends in Ukraine. And the idea is now that our friends also become your friends, that you cooperate with them and there create a network that is growing from friends to friends who speak about friends and organize support and help. We have seen really great examples, heartbreaking examples, but a lot of optimism and the will and the will to win the war and to build a new Ukraine. So the recovery and the resilience of the local authorities in Ukraine will contribute to that, and their friends in the other European countries will contribute to that. Dialogue is important. I think that is also one takeaway. Dialogue and close cooperation between the local and central authorities and the inclusion of civil society. Rebuilding a country from the bottom up only works with civil society, local and regional authorities, national parliaments and national governance. I think this crisis has also shown that there is interdependence between the different actors. No one can respond alone to complex situations. And that is a spirit of trust that needs to be taken also for the post-war reconstruction, when the normal political competition will start again, but possibly in a different attitude. Multi-level governance has shown that it can bring solutions, and trust enables actors at the different levels to take their responsibilities that they have. Good governance, European standards, the European Charter of Local Self-Government are the basis for all that what has to be done later. You need to play the game of politics, of delivering, but this game must be based on rules. These rules are the European Charter of Local Self-Government and the additional protocol on citizen participation. We have seen the technical need of cooperating and facilitating for those cities who don't have direct networks, and therefore the Cities for Cities platform has been the first response at the beginning of the war, and we will have to develop it. We will support the city of Sindelfingen, and we are inviting all our partners to come on board and think, what is the new need for this development? The immediate help is functioning, but what we need is to adapt it to the future needs. From all this, we will adapt also on the side of the Congress our project in Ukraine, but in order to really know what is needed, we are launching a survey on the needs and priorities of local authorities in the times of post-war recovery and also in the time of war. It is not only services to members and residents of the communities, but also IDPs and underrepresented groups. We will also analyze the interaction between municipalities in Ukraine and in other European countries in order to identify local capacities to the needs related to the protection of human rights and to ensure proper civic engagement. The results of the survey will provide a sound basis for further focused and demand-driven support to be provided to Ukrainian communities. We will support Ukraine in the revision of legislative frameworks, in ensuring further decentralization and nurturing dialogue, including citizen participation. Very important, the absorption capacities must be proper, and the fight against corruption must be one of the priorities in order not to disappoint the friends of Ukraine. At the end, I would like to quote again Mrs. Maria Pejcinovic-Buric, the Secretary General of the Council of Europe, who said at the Lugano conference, Ukraine's recovery in its fullest sense requires good governance and the European values to underpin it. On this way, Ukraine and its international partners and friends, all united here today, can rely on the Congress, and we reach out to all those who want to support Ukraine and try to do our best to bring you together. Thank you.
Дуже дякую, пане Кіфер. І ще у нас є дуже важливий.
And we have another important person from Ukraine, Oleksandr Slobozhan, Executive Director, Association of Ukrainian Cities. Could you please summarize today's discussion and share your follow-up steps? When it comes to summarizing, we heard almost everybody delivering a lot of messages. You came up with a very good idea to express everything in one word. We tend to talk about cooperation, but let me underscore joint actions. And joint actions, that's something that I would underscore as critical today. The second important element today is trust and confidence. Cooperation of municipalities between them, cooperation between municipalities and central authorities, cooperation between Ukrainian and European municipalities, cooperation at all levels, that's important. So joint actions and trust, that's very important. That would be the summary. But as to the future, today we heard that the government, the central authority should develop the framework. Municipalities should have clear-cut needs, not only short-term needs, but long-term needs as well. And I wouldn't call it a rebuilding or recovery, but I would rather call it revival as the goal. And the way we are going to set the goals and objectives, the way we develop the trust, all these will define the process of revival. The war revealed the most painful issues that we have, but with joint actions and trust will address that, will persevere. So thanks for being today, thanks for being honest, because today we spoke not only about success, but about the issues. We heard about bottlenecks in our cooperation. And I think in the future, our platform, City for Cities, and fast recovery plan and the strategic recovery plan of the government, if it is based on joint actions and trust, will success in implementing all things we've planned there. We see some comments on the chat. Yurii is very active. He says that 2 words are important. That's together we prevail. He couldn't express that in one word. Tatiana, well, it doesn't fit my screen, but and I can see your last name. Tatiana says, we are indomitable if we are united. Actually, it doesn't really matter how many words you need, but what is important is being honest and sincere. There is an expression of gratitude to European partners for experience. Well, lots of messages have glory to Ukraine, and it's not just the message or slogan. That's the way we live and act. Out of the words that I heard today, I picked up what Andreas Kiefer said, just one word that he used. And for many, that could be the word that you overlooked. That's intertwined, that he said in English. Before full-scale war, we used to say that Ukraine should be kind of put together, should be united, but putting it together and uniting, joining, that's kind of mechanical processes. And if you put it together, that could be tiered apart, but if it is intertwined, if it sort of, penetrates one into the other, that's something that will stay there. So we are intertwined, we are together, we are united. And it doesn't really matter who said this word, but though it was symbolic that it was Andreas Kiefer who used it, it is important that we are going to stay and work that well. So let me thank our interpreters, everybody who made the work today, the work they coped with. Let me thank you for sharing your thoughts, actions. Let me thank you sincerely for your readiness to stay with us today and in the future. That's it today. We'll continue. Glory to Ukraine.